We have 2 minutes. Yeah, just let it go. More. One minute. I show 9:30.
Okay, thank you. I will call to order the regular board meeting of the Western Municipal Water District Board. Tammy, would you please do a roll call?
Thank you. Good morning. Director Torres,
Present.
Director Denstedt,
Present.
Director Roten,
Here.
Director Risby.
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning, President Gardner.
I am here as well.
Thank you, President Gardner. You do have a quorum today.
Great, thank you very much. This morning, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Elena Rodriguez, an executive assistant in the Management Department. And Elena, tell us a little bit about you and how long you've been with us.
Almost 1 year. October 3rd will be my 1 year anniversary.
All right.
Yes. So.
We are
So
glad to have you.
I'm a pleasure to be here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. 1 year is not really an accomplishment. We expect you to be here a really long time, so.
Yeah, but you got to start somewhere. We're glad you started here. Okay, brings us to public comments. Tammy, did we receive any public comments by the deadline yesterday, or do we have anyone online or in the audience who would like to address the board?
I have received no written comments.
Okay,
We have no request to speak online or in person.
okay. We will close public comments and move then to presentations. This is going to be a fun one and a sad one all at once. We are losing a prized employee, Brandon Cruz, Operations Technician 4, is retiring after a whole long time. I don't know how many years. And Craig, would you like to kick it off?
Oh,
Or
happy
go
to,
straight
yeah,
Paul?
sure. Yeah, it's not a coincidence that a lot of the operations personnel are here today. I think it's great that it shows the respect that they have for Brandon and the respect that we have for all of our employees here. So Brandon's been here over 24 years. We did have a nice lunch yesterday out at El Sobrante to celebrate that, and I'm really happy that the crew is here today. And as you said, Mike, it's great for the employee that's retiring. It's not so great for Western. It's also going to be great for that person who gets to fill that slot and start their career at Western, so we'll be happy about that. but Brandon's done an outstanding job at Western, and he's been a real stalwart out at operations, and I'm not sure how many of these guys sitting out here, he had a hand in training and mentoring, but I'm sure it's a lot. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul for a few comments, but really proud of Brandon, and I hope he really enjoys his retirement. He has earned it.
Good morning, directors. I have the pleasure of presenting this proclamation of the Board of Directors recognizing Brandon Cruz for his years of service. Brandon joined Western Water on March 24th, 1999, as an operations assistant. He has been promoted a number of times over the years, currently holding the title of Operations Technician 4. Brandon has consistently demonstrated his commitment to Western Water through his personal and professional growth and achievement. During his tenure, he's earned certifications in water distribution, treatment, and system collections. Additionally, his skills as a welder make him a significant asset to the operations construction crew. Brandon's commitment to Western Water, operations, and his fellow members have earned him recognition as a PACE Award winner, both in 2003 and 2012. As a reminder, PACE stands for Pride, Achievement, Creativity, and Enthusiasm. Awards are nominated annually by their peers and supervisors. In addition to the aforementioned accomplishments, Brandon has proven himself a leader amongst his peers, freely sharing his knowledge and experience, whilst providing outstanding service to the community, especially during water emergencies. As such, it is my pleasure to join the board, our general manager, and my fellow employees in recognizing Brandon Cruz for his contributions, his accomplishments, and his more than 24 years of service here at Western and to Western and our customers. So, with that said, Brandon,
Thank you.
can I invite you up here for just a moment? I'd like to present you with this proclamation from the Board of Directors for your 24 years of service. If anybody would like some opportunity for a photograph?
I think it would be a great idea if the board would take a picture.
I'd like to hear from Brendan before we do that.
Very good.
And I did not set that up, not me, nope.
Well, would you like to hear? No, it's been fun. Learned a lot. Met a lot of cool people. I don't know. It's gonna be different.
So
Much else to say?
are you retiring, or starting a new career retiring?
Retiring.
Okay, good for you. Enjoy it.
And what are your plans? You going on vacation? What are you doing?
Right now, I'm gonna do some stuff around the house.
Okay. The honey-do list. Got it. Okay.
From that point on, do a little mountain biking, a little traveling, a little laying around.
Good.
Good for you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And while we're all up here, I wanted to thank all of the ops staff who turned out to honor Brandon. I expect it means a lot to him. It means a lot to us, and it shows how cohesive and supportive our staff really are. So thank all of you. Let's go get a picture.
Stick around with us. Yeah, a little something to hang on. I kind of summarized a lot that's in there, so you'll recognize it.
We'll get a quick photo of you and the board members, and then Craig and Tim, and then we can always try to do a bigger photo as well. So, go ahead and step back a little bit, please. And then Craig, and then can I have two of you on that side? Or yeah, Mike, you can go ahead in the middle. Do you want, Craig and Tim, do you want to be in this too? Wow, we did this? Or you want it, one with just the, one with the board first? Okay. One. Smile right here, nice and big. nice and big.
You guys are quiet. Come on.
Thank you. Do you want to do a big group? Okay.
Picture.
You guys are gonna have to squeeze really tight for me if you can, but everyone go ahead and just jump up there in the same area.
The tall guys in the back.
No, Brandon, stand up front, you got 50 guys behind you.
Really? Did you? Yeah. Congratulations, bud. I need everyone to squeeze on this side of the podium. This side of the podium, please.
Great stuff.
Thank you for joining us. Come back more often. I love. Yeah, it's nice. So great.
Okay, brings us then to consent calendar. We have 4 items. Any board member wish to comment on any of those or pull them for discussion?
Move consent?
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I moved. Did somebody else move? I didn't hear us, so sorry.
There.
You want a second?
both- you
Pick a
spoke
first and a
together.
second.
I heard Director Dinstead move, so I'll make Director Rowden. The second?
No.
No?
It was Director Torres.
Thank you, sorry about that.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, Tammy, would you please call the roll?
Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstead?
Aye?
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Do we have anything to add to the agenda?
Nothing to add today?
Okay, thank you. Our action items, we have several. The first one is a subgrantee agreement with Riverside Highland Water Company and Rubidoux Community Services District for USBR drought resiliency funding. Craig?
Yeah, Melissa's here. Also on Zoom, we've got Harupa and Riverside Highlands, in case there's any questions of those two agencies who are, I believe, have both taken action already. Or just, I know Rubidoux has. So with that, Melissa, give us some background on what's going on.
Yes, good morning. So we have a presentation to go forward with this drought resiliency grant that we've received. Next slide. So this grant is the Water Smart Drought Resiliency Projects. It's a federal funding opportunity. We submitted our application back in June 2022. As we know, grants take a while to kind of go through the process. Our application was the Building Groundwater Reliability and Resiliency Project, Regional Well Installation and Water Quality Treatment. We received $5 million, and there's a 50% cost match. Next slide. So the scope of the application, we actually partnered with 2 other agencies on this application to help make our application more competitive. Ended up being successful that way. But we have Riverside Highland Water Company doing treatment at their Well 6 location, Rubidoux Community Services District doing a new Well 25 with treatment, and Western Waters Project is to do treatment for our new clay well in our Murrieta service area. Next slide. Here I have a breakdown of the budgets, but basically we've split the $5 million where Riverside Highland Water Company is getting about $1.5 million, Rubidoux Community Services District is getting about $1.4, and Western Water is getting a little over $2 million of the total $5 million breakdown. Next slide. So we developed a drought contingency plan with the help of the Bureau of Reclamation. We received a grant for that, and then we used that to really develop this regional collaboration for mitigation funding. We were able to, all these projects arose through the DCP, the Drought Contingency Plan, and it's really shown to be a success story. So Leslie Cleveland from the Bureau of Reclamation said that showing the process of this drought contingency plan to resiliency funding actually works. We were able to really utilize the plan and the stakeholder engagement in that plan to help actually show successful grant funding to the region. Next slide. So our request for the board today is to, we've been awarded the grant. We now have the agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation. We need to do administrative work, sub-grantee agreements with Rubidoux and Riverside Highland in order to allow them to access their grant funds. So that's what we're here today, is asking the board to authorize the general manager to execute sub-grantee agreements with both of these agencies. And as Craig mentioned, both agencies are online if you have any questions.
Great, thank you. Before we come back to the board or go to the 2 receiving agencies, do we have any public comment, Tammy?
We do not.
Okay. I would invite either or both of the partner agencies to say something if you'd like.
Good morning. My name's Don Howe from Riverside Highland Water Company. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would like to thank the Western Board and staff, specifically Melissa, for helping us out with this grant. They approached us a little over a year ago, and we had never even applied for a grant before, so this is all new to us. So we're relying on you guys and specifically Melissa to help us out. We're also a mutual water company, which we're private, a little bit different than public, and with a lot of the bidding and so forth, we need help with it, and I'd like to thank you for providing the staff, not just for this, but the way they've helped us in many other agencies. Craig Miller and Tim Barr and the entire staff there, we've worked with them for quite a while now. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Brian? Oh.
See Brian talking, but I don't hear him.
There we go.
Nah, this is Steve, sorry. Brian, check your mute on maybe your mic itself, maybe like your headset itself. Is there like a switch? On Zoom, it shows you unmuted.
There.
So maybe like a physical switch on your headset. There you go. Hey.
Okay. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Good morning, everybody. My name is Brian Ladisal, General Manager at Rubidoux Community Services District. I second a lot of what Don just said. We were approached from Western a year back or so to partner on this grant application and to get upwards of $1.5 million for a little community services district like Rubidoux. Goes a long way towards a very important project for the district, which is a new well and associated treatment facilities. So the process with Western has been super simple, made easy by Melissa, very responsive. Any questions we have. We have had success in the past with other grant awards, but the way that Melissa kind of structured it for the district just made it very streamlined and simple for the district. So truly appreciate the support there. With that, appreciate the board support on this sub-grantee agreement. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we are And as the compliments of Melissa, I think, are obviously well-deserved. She gets lots and lots and lots of money, and it's nice that she's able to help some of our neighboring agencies get a bit as well. So, thank you, Melissa. With that, I'll bring it back to the board.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
No, just a comment that, what a difference a year makes, right? So, long process, but well worth the time, effort, and energy put into it. And it's wonderful to have these partnerships and collaboration. And it, again, is shown we're capable of doing so many things together and accomplishing that. So kudos to the entire team.
Great, thank you. Even though it took a year, it's a pretty good hourly rate. So with that, Tammy, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstedt?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
President Gardner, before we move on, I'd like to also make a comment now that it's been voted on. This is a great example of an enormous collaborative effort to get these things. And, we really appreciate Don and Brian being on and making their comments, because Ryan and his team and Melissa do an outstanding job working with them and looking hard for money for all of us as a region. And that's hard. And I know that includes Michael Hadley and our lobbyists, and it also includes the board. And when we go back to DC and talk to the Bureau of Rec, and we talk about these programs, and we advocate for money, the response we get from the Bureau of Rec afterwards is super important, because they thank us for coming, they appreciate the fact that Western is putting their money to work. And they get really frustrated when they don't see success with the dollars that they're putting out. And so I'm really proud of the fact that we're able to go back there to DC. Sometimes people ask us, well, why are you paying lobbyists, all that money? And talk about return on our investment. The amount we pay our lobbyists for access to get in the doors at Bureau of Rec, and for them to help find the money and give Melissa these opportunities to follow through and do the really hard work of pulling together. I think about it, and it's so complicated, because it's not just, well, we saw money. It's now, how do we put together and package these programs with our member agencies to utilize all this money? We're not just going after our own money. This team is thinking about, how do we make the region better? So hats off to that group. And I know the board recognizes that, but I'm just taking a little bit more time, because it is more complicated than just signing the dotted line and trying to get money. So thank you guys for your hard work.
Thank you very much. Okay, doesn't look like you get to sit down yet, Melissa. Our next item is to adopt resolutions 3297 and 3298, supporting grant applications for Reclamation's Applied Sciences Program.
So here's the other side. Here's the application side instead of the agreement side. So Melissa, all yours.
Yes, thank you. Good morning again. So we have 2 grant applications for the Applied Sciences Program. As you guys know, resolutions are a required part of the grant application process. Resolution 3297 is for a GIS project that's going to allow us to actually GPS our assets and get better data overall and location data. So that will be really helpful. And then we have Project 2, which is Resolution 3298, which is to help us do a data warehouse, allowing us to better streamline our data within the Western system for all of the district to benefit. So this is, again, just a resolution applying for the grant application. Each grant application can request up to $400,000. There's a 50% cost match, and applications are due October 17th.
Okay, any questions for Melissa?
Move to approve. Thank you, Melissa.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Tammy, is there any public comment?
We have none.
Okay, then would you please call the roll?
Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstedt?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item is a budget item, $325, contract for district facilities audiovisual upgrade. And it says Craig again.
Yeah, so Michael Mauser has been leading this effort, and I think the board's aware we've been working on this for a long time. A lot of decision-making and, internal decision-making about how big to make the project or how extravagant, and we don't want to be extravagant, we want to be functional. I'll say it so Michael doesn't have to. Our system is really old. The nuts and bolts of, putting on these meetings and the electronics, literally, Michael and his team have had to take components to an electronics store to have it rewired and soldered because the equipment is literally not available anymore. And so that's just a lead-in to the need for this project. But with that, I'll let Michael kind of explain the path we've gone through and how we got here and where we are.
Thank you, Craig. Good morning, directors. Yeah, as Craig explained, this project is to to update and replace certain equipment in both the boardroom and the training rooms here at Western. The date is approximately 2010 from some of this equipment originally went in. It might have even been a little bit older than that when it was pulled off the shelf. So it's getting antiquated and obsolete. So this project is to replace that obsolete equipment and upgrade certain elements such as that are no longer currently meeting current needs, such as the Dias monitors, the projectors. It's a little cloudy today, but we've all noticed on sunny days those can get pretty washed out. So we're looking to kind of update those capabilities there and certain other capabilities as well. I didn't put it in my notes, but I remembered as I walked up here, it includes a updated lectern, so that would be ADA accessible. So things like that we looked at as well. The planning project started some time ago. We engaged an expert firm, PlanNet Consulting. They have expertise in audiovisual design, technology. They assisted Western staff in assessing the needs of our current systems and based on how each of the rooms is utilized. So we developed recommendations and they developed a detailed basis of design for us. From there, they assisted us with developing an invitation for bids to provide and install the needed equipment. We advertised the project for bidding on June 12th, 2023, and 5 bids were received and opened on July 24th, 2023. Western staff and the PlanNet consultants from PlanNet evaluated the bids and determined that Tangram Technologies was the lowest responsible bidder with a bid of $207,717. So with that process, staff recommends that the board approve an amendment to increase the board-adopted fiscal year 2023-24 capital improvement facilities plan by $315,325 under General District Assessment Replacement Fund 105 for the overall budget and need of the district facilities audiovisual upgrade project, including design, equipment cost, installation, and staff time. And secondly, to authorize the general manager to execute a service contract and issue a purchase order with Tangram Technology in the amount of $207,717 for this project. And we do have Alex Salatolo from PlanNet with us today, as well as Jason Jerez, to get that right, from Tangram Technologies. So we're available for any questions.
Okay, are there board questions?
I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Is that going to include consolidating all of this and making it work better?
It will include replacing we call those confidence monitors that the board has accessible to display the agenda and the presentations and such. Those monitors won't be able to integrate cameras and stuff because they're, like I said, they're confidence monitors. So they don't have that ability to join a Zoom session directly and things like that. So that was not contemplated in the scope of this project. It was really to replace that obsolete equipment. So depending on how we adjust the process, there could be some improvements seen there, but at this point, it wouldn't replace both of those elements.
Other questions
Part
or
of the
comments?
part of the challenge is dealing with this. There's limited space, and we don't want to get things up too high, things like that. So we're trying to account for those kinds of considerations as well.
Right. No, and I understand that. I was just kind of hoping that we could cut down on the stuff that's going on.
One of the challenges that Michael is not explaining is that these are not connected to individual computers. We don't have the capability to put individual computers underneath every single one of the board members and everybody sitting at this dais. That would be really, really expensive and really a technical challenge considering the layout and the composition of the dais. So it would get quite expensive to do that. So this is the preferred solution at this time.
So, and we have to have a Zoom option. So the iPads are the Zoom link, because if this isn't a computer with a camera, it won't operate Zoom for you.
Well, sorry,
Okay.
you're good?
Good.
Okay.
Well, I'm
Shouldn't
I'm
sound
satisfied with the answer, if that's what it is. I mean, I would assume that we looked at options and we tried to come up with a solution, and if we, if that's what it is, then I'm satisfied with that as long as this works a little bit better, so, because, yes, they're very dated and we adjust them all the time, so.
This is what we got at the county, so that's what I'm working with on my desk. Will the upgrades, I know we're looking at like electronic voting up here on the dais, will that be included? Will we still have to have a third iPad or third device in order to do so if and when we get to that point?
So this project doesn't contemplate that part of it, so we didn't consider the electronic voting piece. That would be a different project that we would need to work very closely with our agenda management company, Granicus, to implement. So what that ultimate solution looks like, whether or not it's a separate device or physical buttons or anything like that, would have to be considered at the time we prepared a project for that. But I think it's in the pipeline somewhere. I know Tammy and I have discussed it a few different times, but there's been a number of challenges she's wanted to get through first, and this project was important to get done ahead of that as well.
Okay, and then, I'm sorry if you mentioned this, will this include more cameras?
No, it does not. Not at this point. That's an item that's been contemplated, but this project doesn't include them at this point. This was really, the focus was to update the obsolete equipment and improve a couple of the things we noticed that were sort of substandard.
Well, thank you. That's helpful, at least to start getting there.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Mauser?
Move to approve.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Tammy, is there any public comment?
There is none.
Okay. Would you then please call the roll?
Thank you. Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstead?
Aye?
Director Roden?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Directors.
Thank you. Okay, our last action item is a public hearing to adopt Ordinance 400, updating provisions of in Section 2.10.040 of the Western Municipal Water District Code regarding Board of Director compensation and maximum permissible service days. So at this time, this is the time and place set for public hearing regarding Ordinance 400, updating Western's Board of Director compensation and maximum permissible service days. Mr. Miller.
No?
There we go.
There we go.
All right.
The state law provides for the compensation of Board of Directors and requires that any update to Western's ordinance be adopted at a noticed public hearing. In this case, I have proof of publication that shows that the required notice was published in the Press Enterprise, a newspaper of general circulation in Riverside County, on 8/24 and 8/31/2023.
Thank you. The proof of publication is hereby ordered, received, and filed.
All right.
Kevin, I think you're on.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. With regard to compensation, the amount for each day of service by a director is currently $240.67, which was effective on January 1st, 2004. Per Water Code Section 20202, quote, any increase may not exceed an amount equal to 5% for each calendar year following the operative date of the last adjustment, end quote. So if following the letter of the law, this would equate to a maximum allowable amount of $469.25 for for calendar year 2023. However, Western Water's Finance Committee is recommending a lower amount, which is $300 for each day of service up to the current maximum of 10 days of service per calendar month. This is an increase of approximately $60 per day of service. Now, with regard to the maximum permissible service days in a calendar month, the only proposed change applies to the individual director appointed by Western Water's board to serve as a representative on the board of directors of the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. The change would allow the Metropolitan Director to be compensated for a maximum of 10 days of service per calendar month for metropolitan-related meetings, in addition to the current maximum of 10 days per month for Western Water-related meetings. And this change is allowed by California Water Code Section 71256. So the reasons for the proposed changes are that compensation to directors for each day's service has not increased in almost 20 years, and serving as the Metropolitan Director regularly necessitates attendance at multiple meetings each month, unlike appointments to other agency boards, which often meet only once or twice each month. If adopted, Ordinance 400 would update provisions in Section 2.10.040 of Western Waters District Code and would be effective on December 1st, 2023. And this concludes staff's report.
Great, thank you. The hearing is now open. Madam Clerk, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak?
President Gardner, I've received no requests to speak and no written comments.
Okay, thank you. That covers the second one as well. There being no further comments, I declare the public hearing closed. The matter is now before the board for discussion and possible action. So let me just open quickly. This is a recommendation from the Finance Committee. All 5 directors were at that meeting. Sorry, 4 out of 5. Director Denstedt was at Met.
I was at Met.
This actually originated with the Executive Committee, which is Director Roten and myself. There was an Executive Committee recommendation to the Finance Committee. Finance Committee concurred, and now it is before the board. It's something that we have thought out pretty carefully. Many of there's a table in our backup package that shows some comparative compensation rates for nearby water districts. We only discovered during the course of this process that it is permissible for the director who is assigned to Metropolitan Water District to be paid up to 10 days for Metropolitan Water District meetings, in addition to the up to 10 days that they can be paid as a director at Western. Other nearby agencies discovered that before we did and moved to correct that. I know that Director Denstedt puts in probably at least 10 days doing Western per month, doing Metropolitan Water District things. I believe whoever the director might be, it is appropriate that they be eligible for additional compensation. Not only is it lots of meetings to attend, the volume of things to read to prepare for the Met meetings is phenomenal. I mean, it is not uncommon that Director Denstedt needs to go through 1,000 or more pages in a month for Met things, on top of what she gets to do for Western. And this is not Director Denstedt specific, it's whoever might be assigned as our Met representative. It is a lot of work, and I think it should be compensated. So with that, I will turn it back to the board for any discussion, any questions anyone may have, and as appropriate, a motion. Don't all speak at once.
I'll make a comment.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I appreciated the level of detail and research that was put into us looking at this issue and looking at the comparative per diems for nearby districts, you know, how many years it had been since this was considered, and just what the water code says that we can or can't do, and then discovering that the metropolitan issue was a completely separate, could be a completely separate stipend up to 10 days, which made sense, because I remember even just when I first got on the board and I started hearing what that particular director, no matter who it is, that is the Met director, the time and the distance and the reading and all of that, and the committee meetings and staying overnight, and I mean, there's just a lot to that. So I was pleasantly surprised, really, to know that that's actually written in to the code, and that other agencies are recognizing that too. So I just wanted to say that. I appreciate the level of research that went into this topic. So thank you to staff.
I
Director
have
Torres?
questions, but
Please.
it's a lot of them, so maybe, I don't know if other directors want to go before I.
Go ahead.
Okay, I have a lot of questions.
You may ask some of the same questions that others may have.
That
so-
is,
Yeah, that's
that's
why.
true.
You go ahead.
The first one, I was, doing research. I had a few people call me, even ended up, I was running late to MAC meeting, was not to show up, and then I got a few phone calls saying, your representative doesn't know the answer to this, we want an answer. So I ended up rushing to the MAC meeting late to try to answer whatever I could, and I didn't know. My very first question is, the code 20202 says an increase not to exceed the amount of 5% for each calendar year. I can't grapple how that translates, let's stack 20 years worth of, so that, I'm concerned about that, just because I know, it's vague. So that's my first question, is how do we, I know we're not doing the 20 years, 5% each, but how can we legally be okay going well over 5% in this calendar year? And it's just a question, I'm not, yeah.
That's fair.
We can go through it.
Do you want to go through them
Yeah,
individually?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, you want to go through all the questions, or we want to take them one by one?
I'm fine with each
Probably
question.
better if we go one by one,
Yes.
otherwise we'll miss them.
Yes.
Let me turn it over to Kevin, because we looked at this very carefully.
Thank you.
Because we all started off with the exact same question, so let Kevin explain it to you, and then we'll see if you have more questions on the explanation.
All right.
The California.
Assume I'm not a CPA or attorney, please.
I promise. The California Attorney General had the same question.
Okay.
And so initially, one would think, oh, well, 5% compounded over all these years. That would have resulted in a much larger amount.
Sure.
What his opinion was, that was formalized, is that it's not compounding. So in other words, you go back to the dollar amount, $240.67. You take 5% of that, which is $12.03. And that's $12.03 is how much you can increase each year. So the 5% is calculated originally one time, and that dollar amount can be added to all the subsequent years until it's voted on by the city or the agency to change it.
Yeah, so my question at the time was, well, this is a lot more than a 5% increase.
In one calendar year, that's.
But the Attorney General said, no, that is not what's permissible. It's clearly permissible that you can be additive from the time you last had a change. So you can keep building that all the way up, and that's what Kevin was talking about, is it could be over $400.
Right, correct, legally. Mhm.
So it's an important point, and we were very careful about that because it seemed odd.
Yeah, I
So
think
in theory, when this changes, if it changes, then the 5% would start over again
Yes.
for
Yes.
subsequent years from this point forward.
I understand that. That's
Okay.
why this calendar year, we're not increasing it by 5%. We're increasing it by a lot more than that. But that is, according to the Attorney General, okay, because it's additive, not compoundatively
Right.
done.
That's
Okay,
correct.
that was my question. Only because I'm reading it and I'm like, it doesn't sound, it says 1 calendar year, and this, so that was my question, my first question. The second question, and I just asked it, but I just for the pleasure of the public that comes back and watches this later. Section 71256 references 71255 for these additional 10 meetings, but 71255 says 6 meetings. And so that was my question to the general counsel, and I think he has a response.
It does. That's good research, Director Torres. There are other sections that were adopted as part of AB 1234 back in 2005 or 2006 that actually caps it at 10 as opposed to 6, so.
Okay, thank you. And then, just lastly, we have a comparison, and Laura brought this up, so I'm glad, or Director Roughton brought this up, so I'm glad you did. How many, it looks like, we're at the lower end now, right, in our compensation, going up to $300 would put us, a kind of above the Inland Empire numbers, which is fine, but what other agencies, so Met doesn't pay a stipend, it's against their own board policies. What other agencies, though, have these additional 10 meetings and are compensating for these additional 10 meetings? And the list that we have here, if anybody did that research.
I can tell you from talking with my other fellow directors up at Metropolitan and asking that question. So IEUA is the first one that has adopted that. Back in March, I believe, they did that, and they did the split. So their Met representative is now being 10 additional meetings.
Okay.
So Director Camacho is receiving that.
And they also had a rate, and they also had a compensation.
And they also had a compensation increase as well, and they did it with the same formula as described by Finance Director. I also am aware that Callegas and Las Virgenes do that, and Orange County also pays.
Orange County. I'm just looking at this list, but, so Orange County, so the rest, Eastern, San Bernardino, Elsinore, Rancho.
Well, Rancho's not a metropolitan member agency,
that's true.
and neither is Elsinore.
That's true. Okay.
Eastern.
I'm just looking,
Eastern
only
does too.
because,
Yeah, correct
Eastern
me if
also
I'm
has the
wrong, but I
10
believe
extra
that
meetings?
Eastern.
That's correct.
Yes, okay.
So does.
Good, that's good to know. And out of those, Eastern and Western are both retail agencies, IUA is not, but, right? I'm just, again, just
yeah.
questions.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
But they're all they're Met member agencies, but
Right, right, right.
IUA is, they're a wholesaler.
They're a wholesaler. Where does our compensation come from? Is it the general fund?
Yes, it's from the general fund, and all the director fees, director travel, director, any benefits are 100% paid for by what we call general district property taxes, meaning it's not what we call retail water property taxes. So it's paid for out of the share that Western receives from the 1% ad valorem tax. So all in other words, to say it differently, none of the director fees, nor this building's mortgage, nor utilities, none of that cost gets allocated out to our retail water and retail sewer funds. So you could say ratepayers do not pay for director fees. However, one could say, well, they do pay for it if they're property owner,
Right.
through their property tax
property
charges.
tax.
But it's part of the 1%. There's no extra additive onto the property tax bill for Western.
That's great. I'm happy that you had an answer for me for that, because that was the point I was gonna make, is that, hey, we are both retailers, unlike IUA. And so, I mean, I think it's hard being an elected official. It's time consuming, it's a thankless job, it's a lot of work, and then you add on top of it being appointed to a board as large and as demanding as Met. So for all those reasons, I understand. But, so, like I said, I had to rush this MAC meeting, talk to a few of the residents before, just two that called me to rush over there, and then afterwards spoke to a few of them. My concern, and it didn't even dawn on me until today, we had this in the press enterprise for a month. When I received the talking points for the MAC meeting, it wasn't in there. I had totally forgot. So when I rushed over there and they had asked the question, to our representative who didn't know, who didn't have the details, then they asked me, I didn't have the details as best as I could. I'm just concerned that although we are having a public hearing, it's put in the press enterprise, why, why we wouldn't just extend this notification in these types of meetings. Everyone knows that I'm in a very different district. I'm the one that receives the phone call saying, you just raised my rates, and now you're raising your compensation, which now I'm able to say, yeah, but that's not coming out of your rates, right? So for me, it's concerning. It's concerning for me because, like I said, I face the music with my constituents. On top of that, we all know that the people are struggling, right? People are struggling. Gas is at $6 a gallon. Utilities are up. Insurance is up. While I understand that how demanding this seat is, it's not meant for us to make a living off of, and that's what it looks like. And so, especially if a board member has the potential of making upwards of $72,000 a year, if they're meeting all of their meetings, so while I understand and I want to be supportive, it's hard for me when I'm facing a constituency that doesn't understand. And I think, if I know we try to be the best communicators possible, but in this instance, there are opportunities where we can just talk to them. And, my constituency made it very clear that they don't agree with this, and for that reason, I can't be supportive. But thank you for answering my questions. I hope they go back and listen to all of this because it was well-researched and well done. Yeah.
Okay, other questions or comments? If not, I would look for a motion.
Well, I will make the motion so that we at least have the opportunity to vote.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second, and just make a couple of comments in relationship to the Met obligation. I think it's important to remember, too, that the person that sits up there, whether it's me or somebody else, we are advocating for our customers to make sure that they have a voice at Metropolitan, to make sure that we maintain the rates at that level so that when we are making adjustments here at the home agency level, that they stay as low as we possibly can. So I think it's really important to be able to continue to be an outspoken voice and have the ability to be able to go up there, because it is a huge commitment, a lot bigger than what I originally thought it was going to be. And I'm spending 3 full days up there on top of prep meetings with the general manager, the assistant general manager, water resources, and sitting on 4 different committees, attending all the other committees, and reading almost 2,000 additional pages a month. It's a lot, on top of spending 12 hours on the road driving back and forth because it's 80 miles one way for me. So it is a big commitment, and I think it's very important to understand what that means for our agency, to be able to have somebody that can be there for that amount of time to make sure that we have a voice and all of our customers are being represented. So I appreciate my colleagues' recognition of that work and what it takes to be that representative, and I'm happy to make that second.
Okay, any additional discussion?
I just wanted to make a comment. It's just that I really appreciate Director Dunstead's efforts and time on how she's representing all of us at Met. It's great, but it's just, for me personally, I just can't get myself to go, to give myself a raise. It's just, I just can't, So if it was 2 motions, maybe, I would go for it, but just myself thinking about it, I just don't agree to it. So just wanting to make that comment. I will so.
Okay, the motion, I believe, is for both recommendations. Is that correct?
It is, but,
Okay.
yeah, at this point.
And the second was for both?
Correct.
Okay. If it's the pleasure of the board, I suppose we could bifurcate it. I think we could legitimately do that, Mr. General Counsel.
Yes, you could.
Remove their motions, but-
Yeah, it'd probably be appropriate to have the maker withdraw the motion and then, or amend it.
Or, yeah, or
Yep.
or amend the motion.
Okay. Whatever's easier.
Could I suggest that we do the additional metropolitan days first? And then move on to changing the compensation on a per-day basis?
Okay. So I'll cancel my first motion.
Withdraw.
Amending it would probably be easier. That way you don't have to
Okay.
make another
I'll
one. Yes.
amend the motion to separate the two items that we're voting on and to take the question of the additional stipend for the Metropolitan Water District stipend as standalone item.
I see our clerk looking a little
I
burdened
am
with
at
that.
I am at the board's pleasure from a technological standpoint, and recording the vote, it is much more difficult to amend than to withdraw and restate, but we're going with what we have. We're good.
Okay.
Let's move forward.
And can I make one comment too?
Sure.
On that? I appreciate Director Denstedt's comments about Met, but I want to, in regard to the time that she puts in and, how far you drive and your service hours and all of those things, and all very legitimate and appreciated. But I also want to emphasize the fact that it's in the water code to provide that stipend. So I guess I want to be careful that we're not looking at this as a reward of sorts for past service or continuing service, that this is actually written into the code and allowable, and there are other agencies that are providing that to their directors. So I just wanted to make it more clear that we are adhering to code in deciding whether or not we're going to pay the additional 10 days.
Well, and
On top of the, sorry,
I was just going to say, it's, none of this would be retroactive. If either or both are adopted, none of it is retroactive. It takes effect December 1st, I
Right.
believe.
Yeah, and just on top of what you're saying, aside from it being allowable, it's not, we don't have to do it, but it is allowable. The Met Board is a lot more engaged than it was before. They're doing a lot more than they were doing before. There's a different chair. And so there's a lot of work to be put in. Plus, we want to, I think, right, that we want to ensure that our member is supported to take on leadership roles, and that's difficult to do if we're not supporting it in that way. And so I think you're right, Laura. It's allowable, but also for what they're doing, to make things easier, and to be in leadership. I'm not sure if you are now, but if it makes it easier if we are supportive, I think, so.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion?
Can I, if I,
It's not
yeah, if we could just back up and make sure that I understand what the motion is, that we've amended the motion
And then
to
amended the second.
bifurcate, is that correct? Okay,
Yes.
so now we need to take to bifurcate and vote now on the stipend the Met or on the Met stipend?
Oh, the Met.
Met.
Only the Met stipend
Yes.
at this point? Okay, so we do need to have a second.
It's 3 votes, right? To bifurcate and then each vote, or no?
No, we've
Okay.
decided to amend.
Got it.
So I did the second. Yes, I did the second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Has technology caught up with us?
Board Secretary is going to take a manual vote.
Okay.
We're doing it the old-fashioned.
Yes.
Old-fashioned way, I'm ready to go.
Okay, would you please do the roll call?
Director Torres.
Yes.
Director Dennstedt.
Aye.
Director Roten.
Yes.
Director Risby.
Yes.
Director Gardner.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion to add 10 additional meetings, compensation to the Metropolitan Representative is approved by a vote of 5-0.
And just for clarification, it's up to 10.
Up to 10. Thank you.
All right.
So, okay, moving on then to the second piece before us, which is adjusting the compensation of our board for meetings attended. Is there a motion for that?
I'm going to move and make a comment to what Director Risby specifically has said. Director Risby, we work incredibly hard to provide a service that's needed. And there's nothing to say that you can't go over the meetings, because I have done that. Being now in my 6th term, I have done that. And on average, I have worked about 25 meetings a month, and I've only been ever compensated for 10, okay? Because this is a very passionate thing for me, and I've always been involved. So doing the work and providing you just compensation for all of the things that you give up to be able to do that and take care of that is not a selfish thing. There aren't a lot of people out there that work for free. So I just want to give you a sense that we provide a lot of stuff that people just see this. There is a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. There are phone calls that come to the general manager, to staff, to the board secretary. There is representation outside of our organization to make sure that our voice is heard and that we're represented and that we have the outstanding workforce that we have and people that want to collaborate with us, and all of the work that we do for other agencies that come in asking for our help. That's because of what we do up here. And there isn't anything wrong with asking for the time that's allowed for being able to do that. And it is part of, very eloquently put by Director Roten, where this is allowable in the code. And it's been 20 years I've sat here, almost 20 years at the end of this term for the same amount, and I've given up a lot. So I don't want you to feel like it isn't justified.
Thank you.
So that is my motion.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I will second, but I'd like to make a couple of comments. First of all, I was thinking back to how much money $240 was 20 years ago. That's an interesting thought to have. So I totally agree with Director Risby as far as it's really hard to sit up here and vote for what in all intents and purposes is a race for ourselves. I think that our board has a humility about service to the community, and so, and we're cognizant that the monies that come in are from either property taxes, grants, which is still a lot of tax money that's paid indirectly, ratepayers, although not this stipend doesn't come from the ratepayers. I understand that now, and I appreciated that information. But I kind of lost my train of thought. Looking back, knowing it's been 20 years, obviously this board is not into voting themselves increases overnight. We don't have a reputation for that. Over 20 years, costs have certainly increased. I will tell you that when I applied for the vacancy here, I knew there was a stipend. I had no idea what it was. And I purposely didn't check because I didn't want that mentioned to me. Oh, you're just applying because there's a stipend. And it's like, no, we're up here to serve. Yet there is a cost to that service for us, whether it's a sacrifice of time or materials, or as Brenda mentioned, attending more than 10 meetings a month. And you do that because you're up here to serve. So I guess what I'm kind of rambling on about a bit is that I feel that we go, and I'm going to say we, as in my colleagues, go above and beyond that, what that stipend pays. However, that stipend helps to offset some of the things that we do. Another thing that the stipend allows is when folks run for these types of positions, whether it's city council, water board, whatever it is, not everyone has the means to be able to come onto a board like that and not be compensated. So I don't know if I'm gonna make sense with this, but I'm remembering back to my city council days. So we received a stipend of $600 a month. It didn't matter if you had 1 meeting or 100 meetings. It was $600 a month. It was based on the population of the city at the time of formation. It's written into the law. There can be increases. To my knowledge, Hoopa Valley has never increased their city council stipends. But when there would be discussion, maybe a casual conversation about it, you'd get or if someone was unhappy with the city, they'd say, well, you get your stipend. And what they didn't know back then, and it's a little different now, for me, working in a new city like that, serving in a new city, I spent probably every penny of that stipend and beyond on city, whether I was signing up for a conference or, whatever it was. I didn't take mileage, I didn't take insurance, none of that. So I was in a position where I was blessed enough to be able to do that. But there are some people who really, truly want to serve on a board, but for financial reasons, they can't. So I feel like this stipend is here to help with that, to help level the playing field for those who are in different financial situations or retired. Some people are retired, some people work full-time and do this, which blows my mind, but they do. And so I feel like that stipend, it's not millions of dollars, but I hate to call it a reward, but it helps to balance out the cost of service, whatever that big definition is for cost of service. So I agree with you. With you, Director Isby, that it's very hard to, because some people are going to look at this like, oh, well, they just voted, if it passed, that they just voted themselves a raise. And I guess
After a rate increase. Just because I hear it, right?
I get that, but I also think it's our job to explain to people that rate increase is not paying for these stipends.
No, absolutely, which is why I asked. I'm just saying that those are the rhetoric that I hear.
No, and that was a really good question to ask.
That's the rhetoric, not the rhetoric, but those are the concerns that I hear, and so.
Yeah. So with that, I long-winded, sorry, second, but I seconded.
Okay. I would just add that I can't speak for any of the other directors, but I put in on average 30 to 40 hours a week, being a director here at Western, between what I read and the meetings that are directly Western meetings and for the outside agencies that Western has appointed me to be their representative on. I read lots and lots of pages every month, every week. There are times when I have 3 or 4 meetings in a day. And I may or may not get compensated for any of those because we can only be compensated for 10 meetings per month for Western assignments. So if you convert compensation to hours put in, I don't think most of us make minimum wage, or barely if we do. So I think it is entirely appropriate that we take a small, relatively small dollar increase. As has been pointed out, it's been almost 20 years since any director at Western has received any raise at all in the compensation. So I think it's an appropriate thing to do. I think by and large, our customers, whether they are wholesale or retail, will understand that. I don't know anybody who's not had a raise in 20 years who is actively working. And we all work pretty actively. So I think it's appropriate, and I would urge an aye vote. So with that, any other comments? If not, Tammy, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Director Torres?
No.
Director Denstedt?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
No.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 3-2 with Directors Torres and Rizvi voting no.
I would just point out that any director who does not wish to receive the increased compensation is free to deny it or decline it.
It starts.
Okay?
It starts when? It starts December, right?
Yeah, it
Oh,
begins
Dr. Tan.
December 1st.
Okay.
And if any director does not wish to accept it, I believe they can decline it.
That's possible. I would, not being a tax attorney myself, I would recommend if you do that to talk to a tax professional before doing that, because there may be tax implications.
Because another option would be to not receive compensation for one of the meetings that you're eligible for, rather than write a check back. We can't do that. The board has adopted $300 per day, and that's the amount. So to accept less, I'm not quite clear if that would be allowable. So perhaps, though, not being reimbursed for one of the meetings would be another option. That would be far cleaner.
I think, yeah, I think that was noble, Director Gardner, but I think when we take these votes, we have to take those types of things into consideration. But how we're going to respond to it as individual board members is what I mean. But yeah, that was my understanding too, is, there are tax implications to not, and I'm sure not make it very easy on staff to do something like that, but.
Okay. That concludes those, brings us to reports. Mr. General Counsel.
Just real briefly, it's that time of year that the legislature is finished with its session. They're sending their bills to the governor for signature or veto, and so we're monitoring those for bills that are relevant to Western, and so we'll keep an eye on those, and then at the end of the year, in the new year, we'll be providing a report on those that are applicable. If you're aware of any that you'd like particular attention to be paid, please let me know, but otherwise, we'll be doing that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. General Manager.
All right, thank you. First update, we were contacted by Callegas Municipal Water District. They're a Met member agency. They are on the west side of Met's service area. They were kind of the epicenter of the extreme cutbacks that happened during the drought over the last couple of years. They were down to 1 day a week outdoor watering in their service area. This is kind of like the Ventura Oxnard area. They're state water dependent. They don't have a connection to get Met water. They reached out to me. They're very involved in Met issues and in statewide issues, and they've heard me talking about Western and the programs that we have and how we've increased our local water supply from 0% of our retail demand to 40% of our retail demand. So they reached out to me a month or two ago and said, we would really love to come down and do a tour of what Western does and how they do it, because we want to learn more. So we did that last Friday. It was really fun. Albert did a great job. We met down at the Sterling Pump Station, and thank you to Albert for spending his time out there with us. He did a great tour of the pump station in Arlington to Salter. We went to our recharge basin at Victoria, and then came here for lunch. Great discussion. We talked all about the SARCUP program, the Chino Desalter Authority, the connection between the desalters and our retail customers and the MGL. We talked about everything we do in the San Bernardino Basin to acquire water rights, our partnerships with RPU to wheel water through their system and compensate them, our deals with Eastern and with Rancho down in the Murrieta service area. They were all ears. They're fairly similar to us, and they've got sub-agencies that could do the same sorts of things. So they're looking regionally at diversifying their water supply, and they need the help of their retail agencies. So the conversation really turned towards the relationships that you have with your retail agencies and your wholesale agencies, and how do you get everyone to agree to do these things, which is the hard part, right? The other part of the discussion, really, we ended for about an hour talking about Met issues. And so Director Denstedt talks with their director. The general managers, Tony Goff was here. He brought his whole executive team with him for the tour. And we see each other at the Met member agency managers meetings there's 100 people at those meetings. And, sometimes you don't want to be the difficult member agency that says, wait a minute, why are we doing this? Or why do we do it that way? So we laid a lot of that out at this meeting. And it was very interesting that we aligned almost identically with Callegas on Met issues and statewide water issues. They asked a lot of questions about California Water for All, how they can get more involved in that, how they could advocate better for that. So a great meeting, and they agreed that we have some real challenges at Metropolitan and some huge issues. What are we doing with climate change? What are we doing on Delta Fix? What are we doing on the Colorado River? What are we doing on Sites Reservoir? These major issues that are working through the Met system, and they really want to collaborate more with the other Met member agencies to make sure that we're aligned in messaging and in policy perspectives. So a really good meeting. I'm going on a long time about that, but it was really encouraging to meet with another Met member agency. So great news there. And we've now also agreed we're going to go up and visit them and see what they're doing, learn from them. Second item is AQMD abatement order. We brought this to the board in closed session. So this is compliance with Rule 1196. I want to thank Chris Fike and Anthony Budicin, not here, did a great job at the hearing up at AQMD with our BB&K attorney, and we have settled that issue. So 1196, you'll recall, it requires that anyone with a fleet of 15 heavy-duty diesel vehicles to consider alternative vehicles. So that can be natural gas. They really want us to go to electric, and we really want to go to electric also for the environmental benefits. They wanted us to change all the vehicles we've been purchasing lately. So, we struck a deal with them, and importantly, they agreed that we can keep our hydrovac trucks. So those are vehicles that we recently purchased. Those are very expensive vehicles. We spent over $1.5 million on those. And you can't go electric. They don't have an electric vehicle. So cooler heads prevailed, and we're going to be keeping those. The commitment we've made is that we're going to replace 6 other trucks, and 3 of those are going to be zero-emission vehicles, electric vehicles. So great resolution. Chris and his team did an outstanding job, and our overarching commitment is that we want to go electric just like they want us to, but those vehicles just aren't available. Yeah. So as they become available, we'll be good citizens and we'll convert. But we have to be really careful about what rules we're setting statewide for compliance that we're actually not able to meet. So political commentary, sorry. But team did a great job. The last thing I want to update is the October 2nd EOWR meeting will be in the training room. We've got electrical problems with our lighting, just out of date lighting in here and in the board conference room. And so we're going through a process to change that. And that's separate from what we just voted on here for the media improvements that we're making for the boardroom. So that'll happen. So we don't want to meet in the dark at EOWR, so we change that to the training room. But we have old lights throughout this building, so it's a long upkeep project to modify those. And that concludes my comments. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? No. Thank you very much. Brings us to the various directors' reports and requests. SAPA did meet yesterday. They, as recommended by the committee, the Brine Line Committee, did do some reordering and moving of reserve dollars from one sub-account to another. We received a state legislative update, which is not much different than what Michael gives us. And we did get an update on the weather modification pilot program. That's the cloud seeding. They have now successfully located sites for all 15 points to disperse the
So they're still going on with it, even though we are good?
Well, we are for the moment, but whatever that generates, 2 things. Remember, it is a demonstration project.
Sure.
To see if in fact it works and to document it. And secondly, we cannot get enough water here to do the level of recharge that we want to do through the existing infrastructure. So if we can get more rainfall in our local mountains, that runs off and helps recharge our local groundwater basins, which are pretty much universally overdrafted. So yes, it's going on.
I would be interested just to ask, like, maybe the expert on it, because, my understanding is we need clouds, so it makes sense to do it now. We have clouds, but I don't know, I just don't get how it could be sustainable. But I would like to hear more, mostly, just my brain, it works that way.
And again, a big piece of the reason for the study is to see how well it works, and if in fact it does work.
Yeah, I know. Maybe we bring someone in. I have so many questions, or maybe I just watch a SAPA meeting.
You could.
But I have so many questions on its sustainability. It makes sense right now. There's a ton of clouds, but this is an unprecedented year. So I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Very interesting. It's an interesting topic.
We'll see. And I think it is important. Hopefully we'll get some different levels of precipitation over the 4-year demonstration period, and get some feel for how effective is it in a drier year. And when you get lots of atmospheric rivers, you don't want to seed something that is already a very heavy rainfall, and create potentially more rainfall. So in those years, how much do you not operate them when you might have wanted to, but for the level of rainfall?
And then like where it's the perfect point of time where you do it between these natural phenomena.
And there are lots of other variables. You don't operate a emitter, I'll call them, that is going to, or is intended to cause rainfall on a recent burn scar.
Right.
So there, all those variables are a piece of it. And we'll learn a lot. I am not convinced that it's going to be effective in the long run, but we'll find out.
But I don't know. Very,
They-
just very
yeah,
interesting science
They did
in
get some
general.
substantial grant money
Right.
from several sources for the program. It's going to pay for more than half of it. So each of the 5 SAPA member agencies are paying less than 10% of the cost. So,
Director Torres, we're checking right now to see if the SAPA meeting yesterday was recorded, because they did a long update on the program, and it was a receive and file. So we'll check into that for you, and maybe we can shoot you a link so you can at least hear what the discussion was there, and then if you have more questions, we're happy to accommodate those.
there was a good presentation with slides, and I'll see if we can get that
Okay.
as well and make that available to
Yeah,
each of us.
it's incredibly interesting. I'm not a fan, but I took environmental chemistry almost, I don't know, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. So things have changed, but I'm interested, just scientifically speaking, on this case study. So it's really interesting.
Okay? Yes, please.
Yeah, let us see if there is information. We can send the board
We
packet.
can commit
But
before.
I was listening with Director Gardner being there, and there were a lot of questions, similar questions, and the questions went into the history and how it started, and then trying to accommodate some of the environmental questions also, which I think was a really good discussion, which won't appear in the board packet.
Right.
But let us check and see if there's a recording of that, because I think it was actually really interesting to hear the back and forth amongst the commission members.
Okay. MWD.
Thank you, Mr. President. So several different things happened at the Met meeting. Like I said earlier, nearly 2,000 pages for this board packet, along with supporting documents and materials, and some very late days. I think I actually left Met's building at 6 p.m. one night because the committees had just finished. So there were several different contracts that were let for several different projects, about $34 million total across the board. One of the things that is very interesting too was the fact that the board authorized a cross-complaint against a contractor, and there's about $20 million at stake. So an $800,000 contract was awarded, not to exceed $800,000 for additional legal services for the cross-complaint. So more to come on that. There were some comments by the chair when we went to go and talk about this representative concentration pathway of this 8.5 for planning purposes for the Climate Adaptation Master Plan for Water. And those comments was interesting. There were a lot of board members that were confused why this technical issue was being brought before us for the decision and why staff hadn't made the decision. And a comment was made by the chair specifically that perhaps directors wanted to meet with their GMs ahead of the meeting to get a more detailed and in-depth explanation, of which I shared our caucus packet. And that particular report was missing from the caucus packet, and asked him, how do you expect us to have a discussion with our general managers if you're not releasing the report for us to be having a discussion in depth? And that's to all the caucuses, not just ours, the whole caucus. On the Thursday that we meet before the board, because I'm not calling staff over the weekend when this gets released. It's unreasonable to me to make a phone call on a Saturday night because it just hit. So hopefully there's some changes that are made as to how information, the timing of information is being released for us to be able to have in-depth discussions, especially over something that was so technical, over a formula that should have really been a staff level discussion, and Ryan should have been up there going, you know, we wanted this. So, you know, I don't really believe that that's what the board was there to function as. And how that was going to affect policy and our fiduciary responsibility in getting into the weeds on something like that. So I'm hoping my comments were heard. Another thing that is also a very hot item of discussion is the added positions to the GM's office and the dollar amount that's associated with that, and some creation of some positions up there. So that will be ongoing. We weren't able to get into any kind of discussion at the board meeting. It was authorized for closed session, and the chair decided to continue that part of the meeting since we had had a long day already, and half of the directors were ready to go home because they had train tickets to get on the train, and so a lot of them left. And he has now scheduled a special board meeting for the 26th that we will all be at.
For his compensation?
For the general manager's compensation, for the 4 direct reports to all be discussed over their performance evaluation, and then it will be brought to open session for compensation discussions, but to have that closed session first over their performance and then move it into open session. So I expect that the 26th is going to be an additional long day. And then one very interesting thing that I think will tickle everybody's toes, general manager, director of water resources will be tickled by this. I will be sharing this with council, so council and I can have a discussion in regards to this, and I am still waiting for a response back from Metropolitan. I will be forwarding a legal opinion received by the FPPC council to you that was moved to us from the ethics office in relationship to member agencies participating in votes related to contracts associated with that agency. In other words, might be able to participate over a Rubidoux issue. And FPP's conclusion is that yes, as long as you make a disclaimer that you are receiving compensation on behalf of that agency, you should be allowed to participate in that. That is my interpretation, council. However, I will allow a discussion to take place with you before I move to that conclusion. And I'm waiting for a response back then. Does that mean because of this FPPC advice letter that we've now received in official format, does that mean now there needs to be a change to the admin code in order to reflect the opinion of the FPPC regarding this section, which obviously down the road is a huge deal?
So you had to recuse yourself because you get paid by Rubidoux?
There were several different things, but there's also an additional admin code that says that if you have a vested interest into it, you're not allowed to participate in it.
You as in the member, not you as in Brenda Denstead?
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
So now we're sorting through the fine details, but I'm loving to share this opinion with legal counsel, and I'm sure there will be a share going all the way around the table so we can have a very lengthy discussion over that. But I'm waiting to hear back if this is an admin code change first that needs to take place, or how this has to all come effect.
Yeah, and Director Torres, that's a really good point. This isn't a personal thing.
Right.
This is a very odd situation that we run into occasionally at Met, where, we may be advocating for one of our sub-agencies to get a benefit. In this case, it was Rubidoux, and Director Denstead was not allowed to speak about it at committee meetings or board meetings.
Right.
It had nothing to do with Western Retail or anything else. It was purely on behalf of Rubidoux, and so she wasn't able to speak. And so we questioned that rule, and that's what she's referring to, is that they've taken it up, and it sounds like they're willing to change it, but we'll see.
But I'm assuming the reasoning is because Western was going to benefit?
We don't think it is logical at all. That's why we're questioning it.
That's why I'm
I'm not here to make sense of the rule. I am simply telling you the operating parameters of which I've had to operate in.
Mathing.
No.
We don't benefit. Rubidoux's still buying the water.
Yeah. Which was my understanding. That's why I was like, so Western's making that was most of my question.
And I certainly did not personally benefit over that agreement or that arrangement.
That was my other question. I'm like, are you making money?
No, and that was a real hard fighting point that we did behind the scenes. General manager and myself and the ethics office and all of the things that I peppered legal counsel with up there to say, you know, because the Rubidoux thing stretched out for an additional year that it didn't have to because of this.
Right.
Because had I been able to open my mouth and say something that on some of the outrageous comments and some of the things that went awry in the first meeting right out the gate, I don't think it would have gone on. Do you? I don't think it would have continued.
Well, and
for the
other
year
thing-
that it did.
The other thing that is frustrating is other Met board members were asking a question, well, Western, why isn't your board member advocating for this? And she's barred from advocating
Yes.
by their rule. So it turned into this really odd political situation
Mm-hmm.
where we were almost being criticized for not supporting the Rubidoux thing. I was advocating, but our board member wasn't allowed to talk about it.
Right. And I wasn't allowed to answer questions or bring clarity or bring anything. And you can't even imagine how much it drove me crazy to sit there and listen to misinformation over that issue.
I can imagine.
So, so that in and of itself is a really good thing. We get, as Met board members, we get a packet from legal counsel and from the ethics office every month. They go through the entire agenda and list all of the agencies that have problems or conflicts or who the contract's with or whatever it is for recusals. And there's an entire packet that's sent out to all of us regarding each and every item on each and every committee, on each and every board action. So, you know, we have to cover that, and then we're given special scripts that specifically cite the admin code of when recusals have to take place that we have to read prior to any discussion votes or opportunities. So this right here, if that's the change that I am reading and understanding, and I'll have a discussion with legal counsel on this side to make sure I understand, but I'm still waiting for, do we need to change the admin code? So hopefully if that's the case, that will happen rapidly, and then all of the agencies that have a stake in the game to advocate for their member agencies can actually do it, which is what we're there for. So in any case, that's the highlight. No, and I knew you'd be all excited about that. So that's the highlight of everything that happened and took place. So looking forward to bringing back the results of that, and that will be a big deal on the back end for us. So, and that is me taking down in a nutshell what I had to go through. So, okay? That is all,
Okay.
Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Chino de Salter Authority. Oh, sorry. Chino Basin Water Master is meeting tomorrow, so I have nothing to say. Yeah.
So Chino de Salter Authority, it was a very short meeting, which I seem to recall I said after the last meeting. There were two, award of a construction contract for the Well 1-11 Booster Pump Station project and consultant selection for construction management for that same pump station. We really we didn't have a general counsel report, not a treasurer report. The only thing I jotted down about the general manager report is there was sort of a kind of a casual discussion that I've made myself a note to follow up on. Apparently there was a power outage or a power glitch at Chino de Salter 2. And so it brought up some questions about how that could be handled, like with backup power and batteries and those kinds of things. So I realized I didn't ask a question at the time, which is not like me. So I will follow up and I was just more curious than anything. Apparently everything was fine, but as those kinds of things happen, it is good for us then to prepare for, well, what if it was worse, or what if it happens again, or that kind of thing. So, so that was it for CDA.
Okay. Rikra.
We will meet September 28th.
Okay.
We have not
You're
met.
sure?
We have not met since May, so hopefully.
WRCOG.
WRCOG was a pretty easy meeting, nothing out of the norm. litigation continues over the PACE issues and a variety of different parties that have some existing claims, so that's still being dealt with in closed session, although they are coming to closer and closer to an end, so I'm happy to report that. And then one thing that we're moving towards is a schedule was approved for General Assembly for 2024 and for the executive committee meetings of 2024, but we're going to try to move to a 2-year contract so that we can get dates, because we had a little bit of a trouble going to General Assembly down at Pechanga to try to get a date, and we're having to do it a little bit earlier this year in June than we normally would have it. And there isn't any reason for us not to go to a 2-year contract and block 2 years out so we can have the preferred dates that we would really want, because they're an annual event and everybody kind of marks that on the ongoing calendars of, those last 2 weeks, and it's kind of not working out that way. So we're going to try to see if we can fix that.
Do you have the date for 24?
I think it's June 20th.
I believe that's correct.
I think it's June 20th. I'll double check on that. I didn't write it down with me, but I'll get to you, because I do have the calendar.
Thanks.
Okay, and that's all.
Okay. Sarah?
It was canceled again.
Oh,
Dang, I need to get on
Aqua
those
Region nine.
committees.
Yeah,
Where I'm not canceling, they're canceling.
No.
Director Dennstead, Aqua Region 9?
So we're going to go on with the Brenda Day? Got it.
That's it.
Okay.
Wow.
Aqua. So JPIA meeting scheduled for tomorrow, so I'll be flying up to Santa Rosa to meet our interests with the 27, a week from tomorrow, or a week from today.
Don't go to the airport.
A week from, you're good, you're going up next week.
I'm going up next week. God, let's hope I get on the right plane at the right time to get up and take care of our insurance stuff. So that's all good. And then we do have a board meeting scheduled in October, so I think that's on the 20th as well of October. I'll have a take a look. I think I have it on my calendar, so sorry. Yes, it is October the 20th. That's the Region 9 board meeting at 10 a.m. So we'll be having that, so anybody is certainly welcome to attend that. I don't have the items on the agenda for that day yet, so I will keep you posted. And then as a reminder, of course, Fall Conference is coming up at the end of November, so if you are wanting to attend Fall Conference, it will be a full complement. It's down in Indian Wells, and contact our board secretary should you need to make reservations to attend that event. Otherwise,
I would
that
just
is
like
all.
to confirm that all of the board members are registered and scheduled to attend.
Perfect. Okay, so we will all be at Fall Conference. Great.
When will we know the results for the elections? Has it already happened at Aqua?
The election occurred on September 15th.
Yes.
That was the end of the election, and they have not announced when they will be responding, but it should be
Yeah,
before
so-
Fall Conference.
So this is a change in procedure because they normally do this at conference, and I think they're releasing it beforehand. So they've changed the way that the methodology has gone this time around, and it's just rolling out a little bit different. So I'll get a phone call and I'll find out when that's going to be done.
Hey, director's comments. Director Dennstead, since you're all warmed up? I'm done. Okay, Director Rizvi.
Okay.
Director Torres?
I just want to say happy Latino Heritage Month. I hope everyone takes time to celebrate and the contributions that the Latinos have brought to our communities. And for those of you who are Latino and the staff, and I see you, I hope you're enjoying your month of commemoration. That's it.
Hey, Director Roden?
Yes, I just wanted to mention I attended the Riverside County Women's Conference on the 14th. That's the one that Karen Spiegel has started. I think it's 11 or 12 years ago now. And it's always just such a great event. I was not able to stay for the whole thing because I had Hoop Valley Chamber, which I hadn't been able to get to for a while, so I split my time. But I thought Supervisor Spiegel gave a very great keynote address, I guess you would call it. And then the next speaker was Dr., and I think she pronounced it's S-A-R-A, so I think it was Sarah Safari. And she's written this book about her experience climb your Everest. And she was
Phenomenal.
partly unbelievable, phenomenal, passionate, motivating. I mean, she was incredible, I thought. So I haven't had a chance to look on YouTube, but when I looked at the back of the book, it does say her historic Everest climb is featured in the Netflix documentary Aftershock. So I am definitely going to watch that. She was up there during the, forgive me, I don't remember what year it was, that the earthquake hit while she was up there. And it's a miracle that she survived that. It was incredible. Even just surviving climbing Everest is already amazing. But so I really enjoyed that. And it's just encouraging to see the women there and then, you know, greeting each other. Maybe you haven't seen people for a year since the last conference. And so they do a really good job with that.
And they had their largest attendance ever. They had over 800 attendees there, and I stayed for the whole thing. And
Yeah.
that by far, the lady that you just mentioned by far was the speaker of the day.
Gosh,
Yeah, she was phenomenal.
I'm so glad I didn't miss her. So, yeah. So that was it.
Okay, thank you. The only thing I have is, I want to revive our admin code update committee, which is Director Torres and myself. There are some things that we did not get to. So I would like to revive that. Director Torres, does your schedule permit you to remain as the member on that, do you think? We did Mondays before. I believe we can do that. So, okay. So Tammy, I will work with you on getting that schedule revived. And we'll go from there. Requests for future agenda items, anyone? Okay. We do have some information items in our backup packages. Our next meeting is Wednesday, October the 4th at 9:30 in the morning, and we will be adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Well, we got out in less than